Hey there, Russian Doll fans. We are talking about 2 episodes of Netflix Russian Doll tonight. Episode 5, Superiority Complex, and Episode 6, Reflection. We're also going to be reflecting on some of our own predictions, our thoughts on the episode, breaking down a little bit of news and gossip, and of course, we're going to talk about our special segment we call What the Hell is Happening? We talk about your theories as well. Stay tuned.
You're tuned in to AfterBuzz TV, the ESPN of TV talk. Now, let the buzz begin.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to AfterBuzz TV's Russian Doll After Show. We're talking about 2 different episodes of Russian Doll this evening. The 5th episode in this series is called Superiority Complex. Even though this whole show is pretty superior. Also, and complex. Yeah. And episode 6, Reflection. I'm your host, Elena Jordan, and Amy couldn't be here today, but the phenomenal Imani is here.
Hey, we miss you, Amy. What's up, guys? It's Imani here.
What did you think of these episodes?
These episodes, oh my gosh. I can't even just say that it was deep because they've all been deep, but actually, I think it was deep. I mean, we're getting to the root of some serious issues and some past traumas, obviously.
This show is really diving in now because we only have, for us, 1 episode left after this. We'll be talking about the last 2 episodes next week. Yeah. But yeah, man, the 5th and 6th episode, we're like in the home stretch now, getting some real info.
We're getting down to the people's childhoods and stuff.
Yeah. This is a really interesting show, too, because it's so complex in nature. It has so many different levels to it. There's so many different theories about what the hell is happening. So be sure to watch our whole episode and also stick around at the end. We'll be breaking down some of your theories and some popular theories on Reddit. Some other celebrities have weighed in their theories as well. We'll be talking about all of them.
I can't wait to hear.
Because, man, I'm excited to hear your theories, too.
You know what? I have a theory, then it goes out. And then it's just like, you know what? I'm just riding the wave. But it actually has me nervous. I was driving on my way here, and I'm like, looking around. Like, is it my day? Will I wake up tomorrow? Will I be killing a fly? It's just too much. The show is just, like, really affecting my real life.
Yeah, because now that we're on, like, the 5th episode, they've died, as they say in this one, 15 times now. And we're seeing a lot of different crazy ways for people to go. It's very, like,
that
Final Destination-esque.
Not even Final Destination, 1,000 Ways to Die. I think that was like a show of the past where it was just like, okay,
I don't think I could even watch that.
Me out. Yes.
Scared to like touch anything or do anything. So this was an interesting one too because we've had the same song, the Gotta Get Up, every single episode, waking us up, starting us off. Not necessarily every episode, only the ones where she has died and then is coming back to life at the start of the episode. This one we had Front by Vex Rufin playing this like, which is kind of funny because they're kind of putting on a front a little bit, like trying to say that every day is new to them, but they have this well-rehearsed routine. Alan, though, comes to this party, sees Mike on the phone.
Yo.
Dude, what were you thinking?
Deep.
Like,
I was just like, drama. What? Oh my gosh. I'm like, is Alan about to pop off at the party? I was hoping for it. I'm like, Alan, you gotta go pop off on Mike. But yeah, I think was the beginning of the episode too. Who mentioned you think he's gonna propose?
There's B on the phone, yeah,
with Mike,
yeah, and we later
like,
see the other half of that conversation where she's saying, "I think he's gonna propose."
Yeah,
when he then later takes Nadia at the door. It's so weird seeing all of these like connected. It just shows how well this show is written. That every single thing interconnects, and all of these people.
But isn't that real life as well? And it's just like, wow, we're all connected in some type of way you would never imagine. And I think that's where it's a small world. But literally in this episode, it's a small world. It's just like, wow.
This is interesting too, because this is the first time that we've had them really discussing right off the bat, okay, here are my theories of what are going on with ourselves, and kind of how we talked about in our special segment last week, that some people think that it's a purgatory situation. That's what Alan thinks, is that he thinks that it's a purgatorial punishment for being bad people, whereas Nadia is like, we're not bad people, so no.
But even then, I feel like during that moment when she's like, okay, everyone at the party, tell me if I'm a bad person, in her voice. I'm trying to like, tell me.
That's spot on. I was like, that's a really good impression.
I was trying it. But yeah, it's like at that same time, what I was thinking at that moment is that instead of her asking, I can't think of the guy's name, the marriage she ruined, instead of
John.
going to the person who obviously has this relationship issue with her and obviously feels like, yo, you keep bailing on me. And instead of asking him, she's asking all these people who could really probably care less.
I love that you bring that up, because that was something too that Horse is saying later on when he's talking about the connectiveness of people. We see a little later when he's saying, you know, I prefer acquaintances more than actual close relationships, and strangers are the best of all of them because humanity is just effed. So it almost seems like that is echoed in that's kind of her persona as well, and her mentality at this point is that she has this room full, as Alan even says, you keep reliving this great party full of people that are there to celebrate you that you don't even like.
Yeah.
And it is this idea that she has all of these friends, but we've seen multiple times she's not even at her own party and they don't seem to notice.
Yeah, so it
John's
just seems
the only
like
one who notices.
that's her thing. Like, she's just like this. Even she expresses she has attachment issues, and that's like right off the bat we're seeing that. And I think now that we're getting into her childhood and her mother, we see that she has this attachment issue, and it could come from like abandonment and all these other different things. And even with why do I keep forgetting this guy's name? John, even with his daughter, she doesn't want to be there.
Yeah.
Almost as if she has to take that role of a stepmother, and it doesn't seem like she's willing to take that job. So
it does seem that way, that she has her priorities kind of all over the place. And I did one thing that I thought was kind of interesting, that this episode, when Alan is saying, you know, the guy who is cheating, or that B's cheating on me with, is here at the party, and she's like, I'll break his kneecaps later, but like right now we have bigger fish to fry. And how we keep talking about how there's no wasted lines. I'm like, yeah, the fish that are disappearing,
the fish is gone.
maybe those you can't fry them if they're gone.
Yes.
Find them. But then we come to her idea that this is all to do with the crystal door that Lizzie and Maxine has designed, and that this is a, quote, incredibly dense gravitational field that's gaining consciousness to deliberately F with us.
That was funny. I'm just like, honestly, the door is just a nice door.
At this point, I'm like, it could have been something. We don't know. I don't know.
We don't know.
I do want my bathroom to look like that, though. I
do
think it's
too.
pretty dope.
I like the gun door handle.
Yeah.
Great.
I love all of it. And you mentioned, too, when she was talking about how she bailed on Lucy, this conversation with John where he's like, you know, you're asking me about my kid, but you don't really care because the one time you were supposed to meet her, you bailed. She said, no, I wanted to be there. I even had this book, Emily of New Moon, that was written by the same woman who wrote Anne of Green Gables, but she doesn't love Anne. She loves Emily because Emily's a little bit darker. She's a little bit broken. I think that was kind of a little insight into her as well, is that she does want to have this connection, but she's scared. It's almost like this truncated reaching out where she starts to and then just pulls back.
Yeah, because she was there right outside the window, and the little girl, so much like her, gave her the finger. She's like, oh, she's great, love her already. But then she's like, I can't do it.
I love that she does finally admit that, or finally say that she is going to go for that meeting, but
you still
at that
bailed
point
out.
I understand why at that point it is just blatant fear. She doesn't want to traumatize this kid.
What do you think was the reason before?
Because it was also fear, but I think it was just a
fear.
fear of connecting.
Yeah, connecting, and because we also hear who said that she looks like her mother with the hair, and it's so funny that she looks like her
When she
mother.
got her
and she
hair
just
cut,
does not want to be. She doesn't want to remember her mother. She kind of wants to bury that, but at the same time, she's probably being like her mother. Maybe her mother was just too focused on her own to show her that love and that care that a mother would show. And now she's kind of embodying that same thing, even though she doesn't like it.
Yeah.
But it's hard for her to even see it. Well, we'll probably get into when, he put the pictures up. The mom did have the same hair, the poofy hair. And she's freaked out.
Yeah, this whole like cyclical nature of becoming the thing that you fear the most.
Yes,
and
I know some people. It's like, oh, you hate your mom, but you're so similar.
But you are your mom. I'm like, thank you, Mom, for being awesome. So shout out to my mom. I know we're going to see a little bit of the mom, too, in next week's episodes. We'll talk some more about that as well. So
I'm taking my time.
I know just because they have on the thumbnail, they have the picture. So I was like, all right, well, there
I
you
didn't
go.
even see that. I'm just like, good.
But this is also the first time that we actually see Russian dolls. We see the actual Russian doll. There's when she's going to go get the book from Ruth's house. And we see her actually take apart the Russian dolls. What I thought was interesting in this is that it actually shows each layer, that it's the same person, but different layers, a smaller version inside, and all of these different things that she's basically tried to make all of these personas the only people that she can depend on are just the people that she has inside her own self.
Yeah.
Where this whole episode, both of these episodes seem to be about the need for connection and about needing to connect to other people. What did you think about seeing the Russian dolls kind of?
I don't know. It was just like, wow. It's one of those things where, the universe has its ways of communicating with you through symbols, through objects, through many different things. And you may not realize what they are at that moment. But later, hindsight is always 20/20. Then it clicks like, this is my life. I mean, she was obviously fascinated by it, not to put my whole personal business or my own experiences, but I had an experience with crows, and it was just so weird that they all sat behind my window, and I'm like, am I gonna die? I thought it was a Russian doll experience. I'm like, I'm about to die. But it was just like, it wasn't until later that I realized oh, I get it. I'm one of those people.
I mean, they talk about all the symbolism in here and the duplicitous nature of life. I mean, we have Ruth flat out saying, when she's asked, hey, if you're going to die today, would you be okay with it? And she's like, yes or no. How do you get to the yes? And she's like, you can't, because I love the quote too, holding two incompatible ideas in your head at the same time and accepting both of them. That's the best of being human.
I love that.
I just love that line.
That is so deep. We gotta
Ruth.
snap on
I want
that.
Ruth to be my therapist. I'm like, I would
Yes.
never leave.
I
I'd be like,
love
let's just
it.
hang out all the time.
And then it's also because that's the truth. It's even like with the yin and the yang. You got to take the good and the bad. You have to embrace all of that.
Yeah.
It's life.
It's life. And then ultimately death if there's a gas explosion
Yeah. Oh.
multiple times.
And then that's another thing. I'm like, their deaths, the ways that they are dying. I'm like, I wonder, it has to have some type of correlation to the lesson that they need to learn. I don't know. I'm such a dream dictionary girl.
I'm with you, though.
If I'm like, why did I get shot in my dream? What's going on in my waking life? So I think the explosion, she seen the dolls, and it was just like, boom.
Yeah.
So
A literal, boom, mind-blowing experience.
crazy.
I love, too, that immediately after they have this conversation and they die and then she's reunited with Alan, he's saying, I know that you think that I'm just a moral narcissist, but there are good people and there are bad people. To him, there's still this delineation. There's still these two extremes. But he also hasn't taken Ruth's advice, holding these two ideals in his head at the same time, having people who can be duplicitous in nature. They can be, like Mike says, I'm not a choice. I'm the whole where a choice should be. But that he could still be a valid person in someone else's life, that he's still going through his own things. It's not necessarily black and white, good and bad.
That's amazing.
I love it. I love it.
Everyone's going through their own stuff, except you two are just dying over and over. Maybe they're dying over and over again, and we just don't know their life,
It's interesting this time, too, is that the first time we have them talking about how they each died, how Alan died and how Nadia died, because when she says gas explosion, he's like, bike accident. And whereas the gas explosion is an accident, he's drunk on his bike. It seems to be more of more at fault for that death, whereas the other is a pure accident. The second gas explosion, she's like, gas explosion again. He's like, I was hit by a car. That was also when he was really drunk and he was talking to B, and it was this whole thing where it seems like one of their being killed by their own fault seems to affect the other one to then just randomly die at that time.
Yeah.
You know, because it doesn't
they
seem
are
like,
dying at the same time.
yeah, that they ultimately figure out. But that's what was weird, is going back and looking at the ways that they die. Is it's like, oh yeah, when one of you makes a mistake and it kills you, the other one has some random passive happenstance that happens to them. So it's like one active death and one passive death.
Wow.
Simultaneously.
I didn't even think about that, but that is true.
Yeah, I didn't think about it until I wrote them down. Like, I was like looking at how they died at the same time, and I was like, oh, well, one of them, huh? Oh, look at that.
You know what? I need to tell you my dreams. I feel like you'll be able to. Well, if this is that's great.
I'll be
You're
like,
good.
Ruth, just break it apart. I'm like, let's go have a little
Break
chit
this
chat over
stuff
some
down.
chicken. Now, this I thought was pretty interesting too, because we also see after this set of deaths, this 15th death is when Ruth accidentally shoots Nadia.
Oh, so good.
It was so intense when she's like crying in the mirror when she wakes up from her death and comes to the realization, what if they continue? What if these are multiple dimensions? What if our storyline ends, but theirs continues? Does that mean that Ruth has had to grieve for my death 15 times?
In those different dimensions, yeah. So she doesn't even know the other Ruth and how she's grieving. Like, we don't know.
Yeah.
It's like different storylines. But I thought that moment was so intense because, yeah, she did wake up with tears, but it's like one of those dreams. Again, I'm in my dream dictionary. You know, when you have a dream and you wake up and you're like, oh my God, I felt that.
Yes.
And she woke up and she felt that. But even laying there, I think that was the first time we seen her feel her death. Whereas before it was just like, happen, wake up, happen, wake up. This time she's like,
emotionally feeling everything. She's already admitted that
Yeah.
she feels the pain every time that she does. Like, she can feel it every time.
Uh-huh.
But this is the first time I
We're
think it's been
seeing it.
emotional pain. Yeah. Because the physical pain is gone as soon as she wakes up. You know, we even see with her finger, like the actual burns and everything. The consequences of them are gone. Whereas this is the first time she's like, in 15 universes, she's alone.
yeah.
And it's because, you know, how many times did I just fall down the stairs and just, you know, be like, well, it's going to restart anyway.
Yeah.
Because that seems to be the mentality of it. She gets the ash on the table and she's like, it's going to reset anyway. It's going to reset anyway.
And he's still trying to like, no,
Yeah.
girl, stop smoking in my house. I like his attitude because it's like, me and you, we're going to die someday, but we still do this. We still wake up. We still handle our like activities, just like he still goes to the gym.
I wouldn't do that, though. I'm like, mm-mm.
If you just knew, it would just be like, whatever.
No, why would I be
What?
spending my whole day working out when I know that I'm just going to wake up and like all of those results are gone?
You might meet some fun people at the gym. You might.
He just works out alone, though. Like, that's the whole thing, is that neither of these people are connected. They don't
Yeah.
have any sort of, you know, this.
Oh, that's so crazy.
It's kind of sad, really. But then I did think that it was interesting too when they're at the party and Maxine and John are Maxine and Mike are both looking at the painting, and then Alan comes in and, you know, tries to throw in his 2 cents where, you know, they're saying, why is art not appreciated as much as it was 30 years ago? And his response is the internet. Right. And Mike is just like, AIDS. He's like,
It
I
was
would
so
never.
random.
Yeah, where he's like, I would
AIDS.
never be able to just talk about AIDS at a party. Like, what's
It
your
didn't
deal,
even,
dude?
I'm like, I wanted to know, like, come on, explain, Mike. AIDS? What? Come
I
on.
get what he's saying.
Explain
Is
more.
he's like, because so many great, when the AIDS epidemic happened, so many great artists were like wiped out
Right.
from this epidemic that was not dealt with properly at the time. And
But
it
you
seems
have
to be
other people.
Huh?
Other artists.
Yeah,
who emerged.
it just seems like all of these conversations keep coming back to, you know, like he talks about, you know, genocide, and he talks about the Holocaust, and he talks about slavery, and he talks about
Yeah.
AIDS crisis. All of these are, like, Mike seems to be the one who is this beacon of death almost, that all of his conversations are about these horrific scenarios
Yeah.
where people are killed, but he romanticizes it.
He's so much like a professor. This is how they pretty
Yeah.
much teach your classes. It's
So
like,
weird.
yeah.
And he even uses like the John Updike conversation to hit on Nadia the very first go round. This is interesting too, though, because, and we'll talk a little bit later about this. This will be in the "What the hell is happening" segment at the end. The numbers that make up this painting.
Yes.
That are a repeated set of numbers. A lot of people have some pretty intense theories about those. We won't dive into that too much right now because we'll save that for the end for what the hell do these numbers mean?
I'm like, I got an idea. I study a little numerology sometimes.
Hey, okay.
I'm just kidding, y'all. Don't stay tuned. I don't really know. We're going to figure it out.
Still stay tuned, though. Still stay tuned.
Not for what I got to say.
And if people want to hear about what all of us have to say at all of our AfterBuzz shows, how can they do that as well?
Well, before we move on to our next topic, we just wanted to say thank you for making us the ESPN of TV talk. For us to continue to grow, we do need your help. If you're on YouTube right now, hit that thumbs up button and subscribe. And if you're on iTunes, please give us a 5-star rating. But no matter where you are, leave us a comment so you can get involved in this conversation. Being a part of AfterBuzz TV has meant so much to us all, and we truly appreciate you supporting us and doing what we love. Don't forget to tell your friends and keep enjoying our shows.
Yes. And let us know what you think about all of this craziness that is Russian doll, because
Yes.
every time we uncover one layer, like a Russian doll, there's another one underneath. But before we kind of wrap up of this episode, one thing I thought was really interesting, Alan, when he wakes up in Maxine's apartment after the party, when he's passed out, even though Nadia isn't there, Nadia is at his house trying to buzz in, we get the exact same conversation that we overhear where Maxine is saying, "Is cyanide sweet?" Is that why Jim Jones put it in the... Which is weird because that means that that conversation has cycled back even without Nadia being there, because the impetus of it was that she feels that chivalry is a sweetness that she doesn't want. It's like cyanide. So something else has triggered this sweet as cyanide conversation to then circle back to Maxine, ultimately her tag, which is, "I should start my own religion." Which makes me wonder if that is somehow connected, because that's the only thing where the impetus for that conversation wasn't there, and yet the conversation still happened. Only Alan is the one who's hearing it this time instead of Nadia.
Oh, man.
That's the only one that I was like, I don't know what's happening.
That's why I'm looking at you. I'm like, well, what do you have to say about that? Because I have no idea.
I have to say that
It's
my
just
mind is
like-
exploding. Much like both of theirs did when that air conditioner hit them.
That was so... I'm like, wow.
That is a way to end an episode, though. It's like, I told you, I think we're both dying at the same time. Air conditioner crushes you both. Yeah, okay, all right, then I think you might be right,
you're
Alan.
onto
You might be right.
something. We're going to show you right now. Doom.
I just thought that was a little throwback to the elevator.
Same time.
Same time. I'm like, all right. So we come up with a little bit of knowledge at the end of this episode. We know to this point they're both dying at the same time. We don't know how they're connected, but I personally think it's because when one of them does something that ends up causing their death, the other one just has an accidental reaction because they're somehow tied in.
Yeah.
This is interesting, though, going into the next episode, episode 6, Reflection.
Woo, reflection.
Woo! We got a lot to reflect on this episode, too, because this one was pulling no punches.
Yes.
Or pins. Nadia's stabbing poor Alan in the leg to make sure they're not the same person.
Even though we've already, like he said, we've already
established. Don't do this to me. And she's like, I'm sorry, man. I just had to make, like, definitively sure. To me, I'm okay with that because at this point, everything is kind of pointing to them being the same person. So I like that the writers are like, and don't forget, they're not.
Yeah.
But also, poor Alan.
He's like, ouch.
It's interesting, too, going through, they're trying to find how they're related in a way, how they connect. And Alan has 3 siblings. His parents are alive. Nadia has a very difficult only child past that we're diving into a little bit here with Ruth. But in all of this time, the one thing that they kind of figure out is that he owns a game that Nadia designed.
Crazy. I was like, look at that.
And
that
I
he
like that
doesn't like. He's like, this. It's
that he doesn't
stupid.
like. This is another one that we'll dive into more into what the hell is happening, because I feel like where the numbers played a bigger role in the last episode, the game plays a bigger role in this one, because where he's saying, you know, this whole thing is that you created an impossible game with a single character who has to solve everything entirely on her own. And that's harkening back to this whole thing of you can't do everything on your own. You need other people. You need this connection. And the game is the legend of Ariadne, or Ariadne, depending on how you pronounce it. I say Ariadne because I looked it up and that's how it says, but people say it different ways. But I thought this was so interesting too, because she says the trick is to find the labyrinth keeper, who's based on Tatum O'Neal, but with my haircut. I'll get a little bit more into this in predictions, but I feel like the labyrinth keeper may potentially be Horse,
I think so.
because his whole fascination with her hair and her like cutting
Yeah.
her hair and everything, and
even
trick.
him saying like, I'm better this way. He's like, this
Yeah.
lifestyle works for me. So he seems like a very interesting guy. Like, I just want to know more. I want just talk to him the whole show. Obviously not the whole show. That wouldn't be that entertaining. But haven't you met those type of people where you're like, oh my God,
Yeah.
tell me more. So I just
Tell
want to
me
know.
more,
Yeah.
tell me more. Are you a labyrinth key?
It might be him.
Or just homeless in the streets? Which one? Come on.
That person.
Give us something, Horse.
Something.
But then, yeah, Nadia's talking about, you know, the first time that she dies, and asks Alan the first time he dies, he doesn't remember. And she's like, well, this is our Jahari window. This is our only unknown. Like, the only known is this unknown. This is the one constant. We need to figure out how you died the first time, or what we think is the first time. Because remember, Horse, she remembered.
Yeah.
Even there's
We don't
so
know.
much going on
Oh my
here. It's
God.
too much. I did like, though, that they get the feedback, or the backstory on the mother, and a little bit about the mirrors, where she's like, don't even get me started on the mirrors. She shattered all the mirrors, and the mirrors being this huge thing, and they're saying why, and she's like, reflection, proof of existence, another pair of eyes. And that then ultimately the mirrors all disappear this episode. So I don't think that that's a coincidence that this was introduced, that it was her mother's fear of mirrors, that then ultimately at the end of this episode, we see all of the mirrors are now gone. We've seen everything kind of altering. Like, we've seen the fruit decaying throughout. We saw the fish disappear, the flowers dying. But this is the first time that we've seen where this conversation about her mental situation, the traumatic things that she says, you know, it's not that bad.
Yeah.
Almost the version of herself that she has buried within herself, Russian doll style, is actually making physical adjustments to the space around her.
Yeah. It's just so crazy that she doesn't want to acknowledge that. She's just like, okay, we're not talking about these mirrors, moving on. But even with her mother and the Betty Boop and all of this other stuff, and then the necklace, like, we're seeing all this stuff with the mom, and it's just so like, wow. I can't wait for her to finally face those traumas.
Yeah,
that she
and
needs
her
to
internal
face.
demons
Yeah.
that look like her, Russian doll style, like she looks like her mom. I feel
Yeah.
like I think, because the title of this show too is just so much. There's so much to unpack, literally and figuratively, in a Russian doll.
Yes. Honestly.
I did like, though, the show always has the comedic relief, and when they find their other connection is they're like, when she's talking about Ruth, and he says, I'm afraid of being called crazy. And we see this as a recurring theme too, is that they both have this fear of being called crazy. They both have this fear of actual therapy because they're scared of what they'll discover about themselves. He's also, you know, if it's like you said you were scared of spiders, and I said, here's a box of spiders. She's like, well, I think of Ruth more of as praying mantis, and as somebody who's deathly allergic to bees, I find that to be reassuring. Mm-hmm. Then they're like, oh, I'm allergic to bees too. Well, then I guess we'll encounter some bees. Cut to a billion bees in the subway. That one,
Wow.
that killed me.
It's like they're putting
them.
it out there and then they're getting it. So,
I loved that. And I feel like that was also, it seems like they're kind of dictating this world a little bit more, because when something is referenced, then that's when it comes up. We even see like the mirror when they die after the bees is Nadia is there like in front of the mirror, and then we see the mirror art on the wall of Alan's apartment, which the first time that I watched it, I didn't catch that there's like this broken mirror art piece, like a mirror collage that ultimately disappears at the end as well. It's not just the mirrors that they appear in front of them, it's all the mirrors.
Yeah.
All the mirrors are gone.
Woo. So they need to figure it out. That is what's going on. They need to figure it out. Let's go to therapy. Let's do it together.
Well, one thing they do decide to do together is to kind of go...
Oh, I thought you were talking about the freak nasty.
Oh, that too.
I'm like, that's what...
Well, that led in because Nadia's saying, okay, let's retrace your steps the first night. And then they get the other side of the conversation with B that we heard Mike on the other end.
I was dying laughing when she said, are your pictures all from Urban Outfitters?
Yes! I was like,
she came in throwing shade. Like, girl, first off.
And then I love too that she
him.
has where she's like, I never stick my neck out for anybody, but I feel like Rocky right now. Like that's the first time that we actually see them breaking down their walls and kind of his OCD, his compulsion to control everything and to fix everything.
Yeah.
And her idea that she just wants to be completely autonomous. She doesn't want to really be ingrained in anybody else's business. And now she's like, it actually feels pretty good getting to tell her to F off and that she's going to miss out on some banging erections, which then she later finds out for herself whether or not that statement was true.
Right.
I mean, what did you think about that when they hooked up?
I thought it was the hottest. I don't know. If I was going through something like this, that would be an experience. I would be like, wow. I was waiting for it already. I'm like, they have to smash. I didn't know if it was gonna happen because he's such an awkward character that it's like, am I really gonna smash this guy? But we're drunk at the bar, and once he said, I can screw you better than Mike, I'm like, oh, you talking? Let's find out. That type of stuff will get me. Like, oh, for real? Let's see. I'll let you know.
The only thing at the bar scene that threw me a little bit was just when she's like, bartendress, more drunk, please. And she just already has 2 shots in her hands. Like, I was like, you just ready? You're just ready with 2 shots in your hand? Like, what is this bar?
More drunk, please?
Yeah. Like, I want to go to this bar where they just know what you want before you even have to order it. But yeah, then she's talking about her Krugerrand, her necklace, and how that was supposed to be her college fund, but her mother squandered it. We also have her referencing that her grandparents were Holocaust victims.
Right.
And we have Mike previously talking about the Holocaust and the overlay with, the slavery concept and with everything as well, and how these different narratives overlay. So I felt like this was almost a reference kind of hearkening back to that with like these 2 stories kind of intermingled, but then her mother being the real impetus and the real cause for most of these drama. Her mother squandered her complete college fund and gave her a pretty necklace.
A pretty necklace that was heavy. I like how she said that. This was heavy. And it's like, so she's taking it step by step. I feel like she's going to get to the bottom of her issues because she's like, you know what? Let me let this go. If y'all listen to Erykah Badu, Bag Lady, just gotta let it go. Let it go, let it go, let it
Yes.
go. Let it go. And she did. So
She did. I loved it. Yeah, I loved that too, where she's talking to Horse. This conversation I thought was pretty deep too, because we find out Horse's backstory. He was helping create the dark web in the 90s.
Yeah.
And his friend got busted, and that's what made him decide, okay, well then I'm out. I'm done with my computer programming, which is what we've seen Nadia does, her game programming.
The connection there, they have so many things in common.
And just the choices that they make has led them on these different paths.
And we're talking about numbers. What is technology? It's numbers.
It's a language of numbers, literally, of binary code. And this idea...
And what are we? Are we not numbers? Are you not born with a number?
Coded. I'm into it. And I like too that she goes back to, after he says, the more stuff you accumulate, the more space you take up. Now I'm a shadow. She's like, I feel like I'm a shadow too. They go to Farhan's store, and this is when she pieces together, oh, here's horse right here. I saw Alan the first night. That was the guy. And finally makes that connection where she's like, how do you know Alan? And as asking Ferran what that situation is. I loved that up until the point that she comes home to, basically share this news with Alan after stealing his shoes and giving them to Horse. And she's so mad that he's messed with her stuff, which we saw at the beginning of the first episode. He's annoyed that she's messing with his stuff. And he's like, I have all of it, very particular. In his mind, he's helping her by cleaning up her nasty apartment.
Right. And then look at her. It's so interesting that when you go to people's home and the way that, if I see someone, things are scattered and all this stuff, I'm like, oh, their mind is very scattered. They have a very scattered mind. And whereas, like, he's just so different. It fits them. The way they live fit exactly who they are. And it's interesting that she was in his stuff.
Yeah.
Just, like messing up his routine and his space and his energy. And then when it was done to her, she just flipped out.
They're both kind of hypocritical.
Yeah, but it definitely was touching a soft spot in her because she walked in and sees her mother.
Yeah.
And I'm guessing her as a kid.
Yeah. And then when she goes to talk to Ruth and is saying, humanity is overrated. But this is when Ruth flat out says, we need other people. And this is when she's like, other people are garbage. But ultimately, that's when she chokes on the chicken bone, too. And this
Choke
chicken.
on those words, girl.
Yes. This chicken has made such a symbolic appearance too, like between Maxine's birthday chicken and then the chicken that she's having, that's her nourishing reaffirmation that she has in the kitchen earlier with Ruth, to now her choking on this chicken bone when she's trying to deny her association with other people and her connection with other people.
Also her inability to forgive.
Yeah.
That was a theme that came up between her and Ruth, is that she's unable to forgive, and specifically forgiving her mother.
And it seems to boil down to this fear, this being chicken, which it's like, touch your mom.
Yeah.
But yeah, then ultimately after choking on I have to make sure that I say choking on the chicken.
Right.
It's like, that was a different scene earlier. We already talked about that one.
It's just getting too wild.
But then when her saying, there's no mirror in the bathroom because that's a statement on narcissism and on waste and on the beauty industrial complex, like Maxine's whole whatever that she's just giving, whatever her rationale is for why there was never a mirror. But I love that when all of the mirrors are gone, even the mirror by the art by the door, Nadia comes in and says, I do not want to do this alone. And this is when she finally admits, it's time to stop being chicken. It's time to stop choking on this chicken. It's time to step up, use my words, and say, I need somebody to help me. And Alan drops the bombshell of, I remembered my first death. I threw myself off of a roof.
Wow.
What were you thinking in that moment? Because that was such a bombshell that was like, what?
It was, for me, it was like, how did I miss that? How didn't I put that together that he probably killed himself? Because even Beatrice was just like, I was afraid that you were going to do something. Like, she's been trying to protect him because she's probably just already, figured it out that he probably will hurt himself. And I don't think she was in fear for herself, but just for him. So it was just like, that was a very deep moment. And to walk in to see him just breaking down, wow, I killed myself. And being that he killed himself, he couldn't remember that.
Yeah. Which almost makes you wonder, because we are taking for granted that Nadia's first death, when she's hit by the car, is her first death. But we see the first episode, she kind of remembers Horse, but doesn't know from what. So it almost makes you wonder, okay, well, is that really her first death as well? Or did something happen that she's not remembering?
Oh my gosh.
It's so many layers, which is why we gotta, do you want to just dive into this special segment?
Wait, one sec. Where was I going with this? Because he's even asking her, when they were at the bar, he's like, okay, you're questioning me. Let's question you. And she's like, she's not really trying to dive into her situation when they're both going through the same thing.
Yes.
So that's a good point. Maybe she did.
You don't know. I don't know.
Oh my gosh, you done opened something else up in my mind.
Should we dive into our special segment? What the
Yeah.
hell is happening? And try to figure out what the hell is happening?
Yes.
That's what I'm using as our audio drop. Is I just make it. What the hell is happening? So this is an intricate one because there's a couple things. We'll go back first, I guess, to the very first episode to, well, not the very first episode, but the first one that we talked about tonight. When we see all of the numbers that are in this painting, when Maxine is saying, you know, I feel that there is a beauty, there is a validation in and merit in copying and plagiarism. And we see that there is basically this idea that both of their scenarios are kind of copying each other. So we wonder, what do these numbers have to do with anything? The numbers that are repeated to create this art are 7819291965, which some people thought could be potentially her phone number, but that's a Massachusetts area code, so probably not. Also, I don't know whose number that is. Don't call it. Like,
Wait, let's repeat. You said 7-1.
781 929 1965. And some Redditors have gone through here and have picked some pretty awesome ideas, actually, I think. One, we keep talking about Jim Jones, and we keep talking about, you know, that was the one conversation that echoed back even without Nadia being there to give the impetus for it to start. Jim Jones moved to California in 1965. And died in 1978. There's no cyanide attacks in New York in 1929. They don't really know the significance of that one, but they were saying that someone was polishing silverware with cyanide and was poisoning people at posh hotels in 1929. There were cyanide attacks in New York. So not the Jim Jones one, but both of those numbers, both of those dates corresponded with cyanide killings. There's also some other historical events.
So deep.
I know, right? It's crazy. And then they did notice too that between that 1929 and 1965 are exactly 36 years apart. 78 was the infamous Jim Jones Kool-Aid massacre that they reference. You know, she keeps dying on her 36th birthday. So it's 36 years difference between those two dates, and it's her 36th birthday that she keeps reliving. Wow. And the first one is 1978, which is Jim Jones's whole cyanide thing that keeps coming back and referencing.
Yeah, so this makes it hard. Like, what does this have to do?
It's intense. It's like all of these. It's also the Surrealist Manifesto was made in 1929. And then there are some other references to that as well. So basically, we see Nadia at the beginning saying, and that's what you call an Easter egg when she's playing the game. So I think it's pretty interesting, too, that this is kind of an Easter egg that's dropped in for us, potentially. If you guys have any theories on what these numbers mean, please let us know, because I've just been staring at them, and I'm starting to get a little Beautiful Mind-esque.
Well, did you add them up?
I didn't add them up.
See, that's what I was thinking. Add them up.
What did you get when you added them up?
I X'd it out. I want to say maybe 57, but I feel like I could have left out a number. I don't know. There's a lot. I also want to know. I've honestly just been looking into like life path numbers and stuff. So I got my life path numbers. I'm like, oh my God, it's so relevant. So I'm like, maybe if we add these numbers up.
Like, yeah, there has to be some numerology thing, because she also is very specific about the amount that her college fund was
very specific.
Yeah, $152,780.86.
Okay, so we're gonna do some math after this. I want to add those up.
You didn't think this was a math show, but what's up, Russian doll? We got lots of layers.
Everything is math.
And
everything is math.
Everything is math. Even the coding of the game, it all goes back to the same numerological impact. The game itself, we mentioned a little bit, the legend of Ariadne. I feel like I'm saying that wrong.
However we're going to pronounce that, I'm just going to let you have it.
I say Ariadne, but I think that's wrong. But anyway, I'm going to say Ariadne. She was a Cretan princess. This is the name of the game that she created, is The Legend of Ariadne, which also is the name of the last episode, I believe. But this was in Greek mythology. She was the princess who was the kind of the goddess of mazes, labyrinths, vegetation, which I thought was interesting too, because when she's having that conversation with Horse is like, here, follow me. And she's like, what? And he's like, I got plants. And I thought that was such a weird thing. So
I didn't know
like,
if he meant marijuana.
that's what I thought,
I'm
but then they were like
like
huffing stuff. So I was like, so what is that line? But she was literally the goddess of vegetation, paths, fertility, wine, snakes, and passion. So the whole premises was that she was guarding the labyrinth that the Minotaur and Theseus was put in, and she was supposed to basically have all of these sacrifices go through this maze. She ends up saving all of the sacrifices instead. And so it's this whole idea of what, you know, was supposed to be death that she then thwarts because she is the labyrinth key. She's the... I feel like Horse has to have something to do with it.
Horse knows.
I think so. So we got to kind of wrap up here, but any quick predictions before we head on out?
Your AfterBuzz TV predictions.
All right, guys. So I do not have any predictions. I haven't had a prediction in a while because I'm just like, I come in here, I'm thinking something, and then it's totally wiped out. But all I have to say is, do your math, period.
I think ultimately Horse is going to play a bigger role than...
For sure.
Than is being led on, because it seems like maybe he is the key to breaking this labyrinth and breaking this puzzle. And it is a situation that, like the game, they're going to keep dying if they try to do it alone. They have to work together. She and Alan have to find each other, but there's another part that's part
It's
of
like
it.
the video game. You have to, like, if you're in Pokemon, you got to go up to the little guy.
Yeah.
Hey, where do I go? You know?
Well, it's like even when she was going to get the book, it seems like that was just a very, you know, like a quest, like a mission, and then she kept dying. You know, she kept having this like mission quest, the objective. I play a lot of video games. So.
Yeah, it's like that when I'm in Grand Theft Auto. You know, I'm trying to hit a lick.
Which, shout out to Grand Theft Auto, Rockstar Games, which is kind of alluded to with her saying she worked for Rock and Roll Games.
Look
so
at that.
It all
Everything's
ties in.
connected. Look at that. It's all connected.
We're even becoming connected here. I love it. And we love, again, connecting with you guys. So please rate, comment, subscribe. Let us know what you're thinking. We love hearing your YouTube comments. Give us some iTunes comments, too.
Yes.
We don't hear from you guys as much on iTunes. We want to know what you think when you're listening. But in the meantime, where can everybody keep up with you?
Hey, everyone. So you can find me on all social media platforms at Imani Ajak and at MoniJTV.com, where I'm covering everything pop culture.
And I'm Elena Jordan. You can find me on Twitter at Elena Jordan and on Instagram at Elena J. Jordan. And you can find us here next week, same time, same place.
Yeah.
Bye! Don't die
Our
before
founder, Keven Undergaro, and me, Maria Menounos, would like to thank you for tuning in to AfterBuzz TV. Remember, we're not just the first, we're the biggest in the world, and we're the only destination for all your favorite TV shows. Whatever you crave, we've got it. So go to AfterBuzzTV.com and check out our lineup. Buzz you later.
The views expressed herein are those of the hosts only and do not necessarily reflect the views of AfterBuzz TV or its owners or principals.